You're watching VinylicPumaGaming. Hey guys, back with another Borderlands 2 countdown, and today I wanted to go over 10 of what I think are some of the best red text guns and weapons to farm. Now, it's important to mention that this video is going to focus on guns that are farmable in the sense that you have to go and kill a specific enemy in order to receive them. So as an example, something like the Tinderbox could be on this particular list, while something else like the Pimpernel can't because it's a quest reward weapon. It's also important to mention that while legendary, seraph, and pearlescent weapons do have red text, I'm mostly going over items that are of blue, purple, or E-tech Rarity that have red text. Otherwise, this countdown would just be mostly legendary weapons with a few unique weapons sprinkled in. But without further ado, these will be the top 10 best red text guns and weapons to farm in Borderlands 2, starting now. Number 10. The Teeth of Terramorphous. So, the Teeth of Terramorphous is a pretty overlooked weapon, mostly because it's somewhat awkward to use, and because it drops from Terramorphous only. You may find that it's relatively difficult to find this particular weapon among all of the other items Terramorphous drops, because he drops several greens and blues, and you may find that the Teeth of Terramorphous can get lost in the mix. The Teeth of Terra is pretty weird since it's a shotgun that shoots projectiles in horizontal rows that converge like they're biting something. Now, it's harder to explain that than it is to actually show it in the video, but as you can clearly see, it looks like a pair of teeth chomping down on something. Now, because of this projectile pattern, long-range combat is almost impossible, and I think you'll ultimately find that the Teeth of Terramorphous works best in very close proximity to enemies. You'll also find that the Teeth of Terra works best on bigger enemies like bullymongs, as opposed to bandits, simply because these enemies aren't wide enough. This gun may surprise you, as the damage can be pretty decent for mobbing, and while it lacks the flexibility of most other shotguns, both in terms of projectile pattern and in element, you'll find that the Teeth of Terramorphous can prove to be pretty powerful from time to time, especially if you time your shots just right. Ultimately, I find that I really like this gun on either Axton or Krieg, and Krieg does pretty well with it with a Hellborn build. But if you want a Teeth of Terramorphous, again, you're going to have to kill Terramorphous. Number 9. The Pocket Rocket. Now, this is a gun that we haven't really covered a whole lot on this particular channel, and a lot of that has to do with its acquisition, as you can get the Pocket Rocket from the TORGUE vending machines in TORGUE's Campaign of Carnage DLC. Sadly, this gun is often glazed over in favor of the far superior Unkempt Herald. However, you'll find that purchasing a pocket rocket is considerably cheaper, and since it's a vending machine item, it's relatively easy to get a double penetrating version. Overall, the pocket rocket has fairly respectable stats. You're getting fairly decent damage, good projectile speed, and decent magazine size. Plus, since this is an explosive weapon, you're going to find that it goes pretty well with Axton's grenade damage bonuses, as well as explosive Krieg when he is equipped with a Crunch class mod. I'd ultimately say that the Pocket Rocket is a really nice weapon for leveling, mostly because it's much cheaper than purchasing a brand new Unkempt Herald. To give you some idea, a Pocket Rocket may cost around 50 TORGUE tokens, while a legendary TORGUE weapon is around 600 TORGUE tokens. But again, to get this gun, you can buy it in a TORGUE vending machine from the TORGUE's Campaign of Carnage DLC. Number 8. The Fremington's Edge. When compared to other sniper rifles, the Fremington's Edge may come up short and may not deal as much damage as you might like. However, the Fremington's Edge is fairly easy to farm for once you've completed the Assassinate the Assassin side quest in Southpaw Steam and Power. And to get the Fremington's Edge specifically, you'll need to kill Assassin Wreath, who is the third assassin. Now, what makes the Fremington's Edge special is that it has the best zoom of any sniper rifle in the game. What's also pretty cool is that while you're aiming down the sights or you're aiming down the scope, you're getting enhanced critical hit bonus on Fremington's Edge. So if you've played the original Borderlands, the Cyclops sniper is very similar to the Fremington's Edge. And in fact, I'm surprised that they didn't just make it legendary and call it the Cyclops. After all, that would have been better than the Emperor. But I digress. This is another really good gun for early leveling. Otherwise, later on in the game, go with something like a Pimpernel, a Snider, Droog, or even the Lyuda. Number 7. The Last Cow. The Last Cow is probably one of the easiest guns to farm in this game. To get one, all you have to do is go to Frostburn Canyon, and as you make your way into the caves, go towards some of the pools of water, and you should be able to find yourself the Last Cow. The Last Cow is often compared to the Double Anarchy from Borderlands 1. This is because it's an SMG with a ×2 projectile multiplier with fairly decent fire rate and relatively low recoil. The only downside is that it can't come in any element and must always spawn as a non-elemental weapon. And to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of the burst fire on the Last Cow, but I really like it for hip firing. And I've found that it works really well with Axton's Onslaught and Gage's Unstoppable Force, where their movement speed is increased. The lack of elemental versions does hamper this weapon's viability in later difficulties, but you've also got to balance that out with the fact that this gun is very easy to get. Overall, I would say that a Last Cow is worth picking up if you really like SMGs. Number 6, the Blockhead. This shotgun, along with the longbow sniper rifle, are Borderlands 2's Minecraft-themed weapons. Both of these weapons only come in fire elements, and they drop from badass creepers from the Minecraft Easter egg that's located in the Caustic Caverns. Now, keep in mind that the longbow is a legendary weapon, while the Blockhead is just a blue rarity weapon with red text. And this is overall a pretty nice shotgun, and it has a very consistent 3x3 projectile pattern, which makes hip firing very easy. Now, this shotgun is pretty decent on most characters, however, you may find that you really like it on Krieg if you've got a Hellborn/Bloodlust hybrid build. In that situation, the Blockhead can be a pretty decent alternative to the Omen shotgun, which requires DLC, while the Blockhead itself does not. My only other complaint is that your reload damage is going to be a little bit lower than it would be with the Octo and Omen shotguns, so if you're playing Axton, maybe that's an issue. However, if you're using this with Krieg, I would ultimately go with the Blockhead over the Octo any day. Number 5, the Slow Hand. The Slow Hand is basically a more ideal version of E-tech splat guns. Instead of firing and having the projectiles follow an arc pattern, the Slow Hand fires a projectile that keeps traveling until it hits a target. So you should be getting better range overall. And while it's true that the Slow Hand is probably better for medium distance or close range combat, you're getting a weapon that deals decent damage, is relatively accurate, and heals you for a percentage of damage dealt. Plus, the Slow Hand comes in all elements, making it a nice choice as a splat gun alternative. There are some downsides though. The splash damage that the Slow Hand deals can hurt the player, and you may also find that ammo consumption is relatively high, while reload speed is also relatively low. On certain characters like Axton, you're going to find that you're simply reloading too much. That said, Salvador and Krieg have workarounds for this, as the Bloodlust tree for Krieg will allow you to increase your reload speed and the magazine size of this gun, so you can fire forever, and with Salvador's Inconceivable, you can fire shots that don't even consume ammo, thus eliminating that problem entirely. Now, to get a Slow Hand, you will need to either kill Piston or Badass Asaurus Rex in the TORGUE's Campaign of Carnage DLC, and you can do this as you complete or after you have completed the entire main questline for the TORGUE DLC. Number 4, the Hive. So the Hive is a fairly unique rocket launcher. Typically, rocket launchers are fired and then they explode when they come into contact with a specific surface. However, the Hive is different in the sense that you fire an orb that deploys several small needles which home in on enemies dealing damage. And what's nice about this is that the bulk of your damage is spread out over time, where other rocket launchers you just usually fire and it deals whatever damage it's going to deal right in that second. Now, to get a Hive, you will have to kill Saturn in the Arid Nexus Badlands, and this guy is pretty hard as he can't be slagged and he has fairly high splash resistance. So if you are going to farm him, I'd recommend you use either Salvador or use a bee and the Sandhawk to take him down. The Hive is best used with certain tactics. I'd say to get the most out of it, you're going to want at least a Grog Nozzle and a Bee Shield. That way, you can use the Grog Nozzle's Drunk effect to fire more orbs that can spawn more needles to deal damage, and then you can use the Bee Shield to increase the damage of each individual needle. And keep in mind that since these needles are unlisted, they do get full amp damage. Now, you may also find that you like this weapon on Gauge 2 when combined with Anarchy, so that's something you can consider as well. Number 3, the Rough Rider. Alright, so I know that this isn't technically a gun or weapon per se, but the Rough Rider is an excellent red text shield that you can farm from Bulwark, insert Hammerlock's Big Game Hunt DLC. Now, it's sort of bizarre in the sense that it always has a capacity of 0, it boosts health by a specific number based on level and the specific shield parts, and it provides roughly 20% damage resistance. Overall, this is pretty boring and fairly obvious. However, where the Rough Rider shines is how it applies to a certain character's skills. Arguably, Gage benefits from the Rough Rider the least, while Axton and Zero have Crisis Management and Fearless, which improve damage or increase damage and fire rate respectively. Maya has a skill called Fleet, which increases her movement speed as long as her shields are depleted, which means that she gains a permanent speed buff while the Rough Rider is equipped. There's also Salvador, who benefits from the Rough Rider when it's combined with a Monk class mod and his Inconceivable skill. And with this combo, you can get +6 to Money Shot while also maintaining 0 shield capacity, which makes Inconceivable more likely to activate. And finally, there's Krieg, who really benefits from combining the Rough Rider with a Heart of the Ancients relic and a Legendary Sickle class mod for a really powerful BuzzX Rampage style build. And you'll find at higher levels that Krieg can achieve over 3 million health with some decent damage resistance, making him much tankier and much more deadly. This is a really good item to have and experiment with for each character. That said, Salvador and Krieg are probably going to make the best use of it. Number 2, the Twister. So the Twister is one of the more unique and interesting weapons in Borderlands 2. This is because it's a shock elemental Jacob shotgun that fires its projectiles in a tornado or twister-like projectile pattern. In fact, it's one of 4 Jacob's weapons that deal elemental damage in Borderlands 2. The other 3 being the Greed Fire Pistol, the Stinkpot Corrosive Assault Rifle, and the Cobra Explosive Sniper Rifle. Now, for whatever reason, all of these weapons are somewhat difficult to obtain. Thankfully, the Twister can be refarmed fairly reliably, where you have to get lucky to find the Cobra, you have to beat the Captain Scarlet DLC for the Greed, and the Stink Pot requires you to get it to drop from a non-reformable boss. Now, to get the Twister, you will need to spawn Omen Omedak, which is basically an ultra badass version of a badass savage. And to level these guys up, you will need to have a Witch Doctor present, and even still, Omen Omedak can be difficult to spawn. However, acquiring a Twister is definitely worth it in my opinion, especially if you're playing Gage and you've spec'd for both Wires Don't Talk and Anarchy. Obviously, you're going to want Wires Don't Talk and a Shockbone of the Ancients to greatly improve the damage output, and Anarchy tends to work really well with the Twister because of its unique projectile pattern. Even at relatively high Anarchy stacks, the Twister tends to be fairly accurate, and the projectiles will usually go where you might expect. And you may also like the Twister in conjunction with the Lady Fist as well. On Maya, you can fire the Twister and then quickly switch to a Lady Fist to get massively boosted damage. And while this works with other weapons, it's a little easier to do on the Sandhawk thanks to the slower projectile speed. If you're looking for red text weapons, this is definitely one to farm for, you won't regret it. And finally, number 1, the Magic Missile. So, the Magic Missile is probably one of, if not the best grenade mods in Borderlands 2 to use as an alternative slag method. Instead of swapping to a different gun like the Grog Nozzle or Slagga, you can simply throw a Magic Missile grenade and it should do the slagging for you. The Magic Missile is pretty self-explanatory. This is a grenade that you simply throw and the little purple orbs home in on enemies, dealing some damage, and they also have a chance to slag your enemies as well. And since the Magic Missile is one of the magic regenerating grenades from the Dragon Keep DLC, the Magic Missile will regenerate ammo over time, and this makes it a much more practical option than something like a Slag Bouncing Betty or a Bandit Slag Merv grenade. Now, there are 2 variations based on rarity. The blue version fires 2 magic missiles, while the purple one fires 4. If possible, you're going to have the best slag chance with the purple rarity version, so if you can, try to get that one. Now, when it comes to enemies dropping a magic missile, most generic wizards and necromancers can drop the blue rarity version. However, badass wizards drop the purple version, so you will need to farm them in order to get your ideal version. Overall though, I highly recommend this grenade mod, and to be honest, it's probably one of the best farmable red text guns or weapons in this game. Alright guys, that's going to wrap up this particular video. If you like this video, please be sure to leave a like, and as always, take care, and I'll see y'all next time.